Welcome to this comprehensive explainer on navigating heartbreak and really, truly reclaiming yourself. When the person you love pulls away, your own instincts will often just completely betray you. Every fiber of your being might be screaming at you to reach out, to beg, to make them understand your side of things. But what's actually happening in your brain right then is a literal panic response. Your attachment system is just flashing red, triggering this deep survival mechanism that basically mistakes losing a partner for an actual physical threat to your life. That's exactly why the urge to fix things immediately feels so totally overwhelming. But today, we're going to bypass that panic. We are going to look at the concrete, psychology-backed architecture of moving on and building a life that is incredibly worth living. Okay, let's dive into this. So here is the roadmap for the hero's journey we'll be taking today. We'll start with the reality of rejection. Then we'll define and prevent stalking behaviors, explore the path of dignity, understand how to actually survive emotional withdrawal, reclaim your identity, and finally, look at exactly when to move forward. Think of this as your deliberate, structured playbook to help guide you safely out of the crisis. We're starting off with part 1, the reality of rejection and accepting your current state. The absolute first step in this journey is just acknowledging exactly where you are right now and doing it without any defensiveness whatsoever. Look, the pain you're feeling right now, it is not a weakness, not at all. It's a completely normal, natural response to loss. But there is a massive, massive difference between feeling that pain and performing it. From an evolutionary standpoint, emotional pain is meant to be a signal. It tells your brain to slow down, to process a really significant life change, and to regroup. It evolved to protect us, much like how physical pain physically prevents us from, say, walking on a broken leg. But you have to acknowledge your grief without amplifying it. When we wallow in self-pity or dramatize our suffering or constantly seek sympathy from mutual friends, we kind of trap ourselves. You begin treating the pain as your core identity rather than just a temporary state that you're passing through. Remember, pain is just a signal. It's not who you are. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it frames honest self-evaluation. It is incredibly uncomfortable to do, but completely necessary. You really have to review the relationship and differentiate between resolvable issues and structural issues. Resolvable issues are the things you can actually fix with a bit of effort and behavioral changes. For example, maybe you had mismatched chore schedules, or you consistently communicated poorly when you were stressed out from work. Those are things that can absolutely be worked on. But structural issues? Those are fundamental incompatibilities. If one of you really wants children and the other absolutely doesn't, or if your core values about money or family fundamentally clash, those are structural. You simply have to accept them. You need to know the difference before deciding your next move. And keep in mind, sometimes a partner's complete silence is just a structural boundary they just don't know how to verbalize. We must respect that. That brings us to part 2, defining and preventing stalking. This is what we call the danger zone. And establishing strict boundary lines here is absolutely vital for both their safety and your own recovery. Stalking is a really heavy word, I know. But we need to look at the clinical definition based on the CDC and SPARC guidelines. It is any repeated, unwanted contact or surveillance that causes a person to feel fear, distress, or simply unsafe. Psychologically, when you go through a breakup, your brain is suddenly starved of the dopamine that the relationship used to provide. In pure desperation, it tries to rationalize crossing clear boundaries by calling it romantic persistence. You might genuinely convince yourself that you're just fighting for love. But the most important thing to understand here is that the impact on the other person is what defines the behavior, not your intention. If it is unwanted, it's intrusive and it's harmful. A clear no, or even them just pulling away consistently, is a hard boundary that must be honored. We need to rapidly run through some common stalking behaviors so we can demand extreme accountability from ourselves. This includes repeatedly texting or calling when they aren't responding, showing up at their job or their gym uninvited, digital monitoring, sending unwanted gifts. Now, you might think sending flowers or a heartfelt letter when they've asked for space is this grand, beautiful romantic gesture. But to the person receiving it, it doesn't feel like love. It creates a terrifying feeling of being trapped, and it signals that their boundaries mean absolutely nothing to you. Forcing interactions by trying to accidentally bump into them operates the exact same way. Even if your messages are sweet and nice, if they are unwanted, they cross the line into toxic behavior. Healthy people stop quickly once they see the other person just isn't interested. Beyond physical boundaries, there are massive digital traps we fall into. Social media surveillance, the comparison spiral, and the open door obsession. The comparison spiral is particularly destructive. Every single time you check their profile, you are comparing your agonizing internal reality to their curated, totally fake external highlight reel. All you're doing is reopening the wound. You aren't gaining information. You're feeding an obsession that keeps you anchored to someone who has already moved on. Watching their stories just fuels your anxiety and gives you a distorted picture of their life that is literally designed to look perfect. You have to reclaim your mental focus. You do that by temporarily blocking them or deleting their number, just to remove the temptation entirely. It's for your own peace of mind. Moving into part 3, we explore the path of dignity. How you conduct yourself right now is going to define your character far, far more than the relationship itself ever did. Now, if you do choose to pursue reconciliation, and honestly, you should only attempt this once and only once, the quality of your apology is everything. A weak, self-pitying apology does far more damage than none at all. A truly strong apology has 3 concrete steps. 1. Be specific. Actually name the exact behaviors that caused harm. 2. Own it fully, without any conditions or deflecting blame onto them or the situation. And 3. Show, don't promise. This 3rd step, this is where 90% of people completely fail. Demonstrating change requires actual difficult behavior modification over months. It is not just a dramatic, emotionally charged text message sent at 2 a.m. You have to prove it through consistent action over time, not just empty words. Whether you attempt reconciliation or you choose to move on, you absolutely must walk this path of dignity. Speak of your ex with respect, even when it deeply, deeply hurts. Refuse to play mind games or manufacture jealousy. Those manipulation tactics, they only cheapen your own self-worth and they never, ever produce genuine reconnection. Respond to the pain with grace. And what does grace actually look like in practice? Well, it means when mutual friends ask about the breakup, you use a simple microscript. You say something like, "It didn't work out, but I wish them the best," and then you naturally change the subject. You don't vent, you don't gossip, and you don't seek allies. Choosing emotional maturity is literally the most magnetic trait you can display. So the crucial point is how you actually execute this detachment. It's vital. First, accept the finality. Stop negotiating with reality and stop waiting around for a message. Second, cut all voluntary contact. No texting, no checking profiles, 0 new input. And third, interrupt the mental loops. When you catch yourself replaying the rejection over and over or rewriting the past in your head, you need to actively employ thought-stopping techniques. Internally say to yourself, "Not helpful," and immediately redirect your attention to something physical. Focus on the feeling of your feet flat on the floor or the temperature of the room you're in. These grounding exercises train your mind to literally break the neurological loop of rumination, stopping you from feeding that attachment. Let's look at part 4, surviving emotional withdrawal. This is the part where we frame your emotional recovery as a serious project, one that requires a thoroughly professional mindset. Here's a wild fact. Heartbreak activates the exact same neural pathways in your brain as withdrawal from an addictive substance. The constant cravings, the obsessive thoughts, that literal physical ache in your chest, these are profoundly real biochemical withdrawal symptoms. Your brain is currently going through a massive withdrawal of oxytocin and dopamine, and it's paired with a massive spike in the stress hormone cortisol. Validating this physical reality is totally essential. To survive it, you really have to approach your recovery like a project. Set routines, measure your progress. Embrace the pain without trying to numb it with cheap distractions, just let it pass naturally. And show yourself absolute self-compassion. Treat yourself exactly like you would a close friend who is navigating this exact same biochemical storm. To truly heal, we have to deeply deconstruct our romanticized ideas. First, we have the biochemical obsession of limerence. Limerence is an involuntary attachment fueled by uncertainty. It involves intrusive, all-consuming thoughts, physical anxiety, and the very dangerous illusion that the single person is the absolute sole source of your happiness. It feels exactly like profound love, but it's really an amplified biochemical response to rejection. Then we have the soulmate myth. This is the totally destructive idea that there is one singular person on Earth who completes you. If you believe this, you're likely in love with the idea of them, placing them on a pedestal no real flawed human being could ever actually occupy. The truth is, there are multiple highly compatible partners out there for you. Understanding the difference between obsessive limerence and true reciprocal love, it is deeply, deeply liberating. That brings us to part 5, reclaiming your identity. We are now entering the triumphant return phase of our journey. The heavy lifting of detachment is done, and our focus shifts entirely to building a stronger, beautifully independent self. Every single hour you spend ruminating about the past is an hour stolen from your own genuine personal growth. You need a deliberate reinvestment strategy, and it focuses on 4 main pillars. First up, physical health. Exercise isn't just about looking good, you know? It literally processes the stress hormones out of your body, making it the single fastest way to reclaim your emotional regulation. Second, professional goals. Take all of that raw, messy emotional intensity and channel it straight into your work or your craft. Third, social investment. Reconnect with friends and community. Doing so actively reminds you that you are lovable and valued completely outside of a romantic context. And fourth, new experiences. Travel, learn a language, create art. You aren't just recovering here, you are constructing a better, more fulfilled version of who you are.
And this brilliantly illustrates that the ultimate goal here is building your future. You see, you were a complete person before she entered your life, and you are still a complete person now. A partner only enriches a life, they do not create it. This is your moment to design a life so compelling and rich that it stands entirely on its own. You have to find blissful solitude, because if you cannot be genuinely happy and content while alone, any future relationship you enter will just be built on dependency and a fear of abandonment, rather than a genuine, secure choice. Prepare yourself for true happiness by becoming deeply, profoundly comfortable with your own company.
I want you to really think about this for a second. Who were you before you made her the center of your world? You need to reconnect with your core values, your passions, and your purpose. Often in relationships, we suffer from enmeshment. We gradually lose our own hobbies, we might distance ourselves from our own friends, and we merge completely with our partner. Well, now is the time to untangle all of that. When your independent identity grows, the attachment to the rejection naturally shrinks. Your value has never, ever been determined by someone else's decision to stay or go. Finally, we reach part 6, when to move forward. Letting go isn't giving up. Not at all. It is a profound act of self-respect. It really helps to manage your own expectations by understanding psychological recovery timelines. A mild crush, that usually takes days to weeks to process. A deep emotional investment might take 2 to 6 weeks. And if this person was heavily tied to your past or your nostalgia, it can easily take 1 to 3 months, or honestly, even much longer. Why does nostalgia take so long to heal? Well, because you aren't just mourning the person, you are actively mourning a past version of yourself, and you are grieving a future that you had vividly imagined but is now never going to happen. Deeper ties naturally take much longer to heal, and I want to warmly reassure you that is perfectly okay. You are ready to move on when you stop waiting for them to change their mind, and you can finally think about dating with openness and curiosity, rather than desperation. Let's move to and see how this builds into a truly profound, heroic mindset shift. My story doesn't end with someone who didn't choose me. You don't move on when you simply stop caring. You move on when you realize this truth. Rejection isn't a verdict on your worth. It is a filter. Someone's inability to choose you is actually vital data. It proves without a shadow of a doubt that they are not your structural match. It's a filter that just removes people who aren't aligned with your amazing future. And when you truly embrace this, your energy rises, your confidence returns, and you become naturally magnetic to someone new. I want to leave you with this final, empowering thought. I release what isn't choosing me so I can become someone who chooses better. The greatest comeback isn't winning them back. It's becoming a version of yourself that you are genuinely, fiercely proud of. The story does not end here. It begins here. So what is one thing you can do today to stop feeding the ghost of your past and start building the person who chooses better tomorrow?